Hey there, and welcome to my channel, Stitches by Liz.
In this tutorial, I will be showing you how I crocheted this sunflower-inspired backpack. I used Loops and Threads chocolate brown yarn, sapphire, and red hearts, pale yellow, and bright yellow. You will also need these supplies. Pause if needed. To get started, I need you to make 10 granny squares that are about 6 inches long and wide, and I'm going to need you to make 9 smaller granny squares that are about 4 inches long and 4 inches wide. As you can see, for the bigger square, I have 2 rows of dark brown, 1 row of dark yellow, 1 row of light yellow, and 2 rows of dark blue. For the smaller square, I have 1 row of dark brown, 1 row of dark yellow, 1 row of light yellow, and the last row is just 1 row of dark blue. If you are unsure of how to make a granny square, please refer to my other videos. Once you have 10 6-inch granny squares and 9 4-inch granny squares, I want you to sew them together like so. See how I have these 4 granny squares sewed together? I would like you to do the same for another 4, and I want you to sew 2 together. As for the little granny squares, I want you to sew 3 together in a row. If you are unsure of how to sew together granny squares, please refer to my other videos.
Okay, so now that you're ready for assembly, grab your scissors, your yarn needle, and some extra yarn, and let's get to work. So the first thing I want you to do is match up the little granny squares to the big granny squares corner, like so. I want you to sew along this edge. Do the same for the bottom. Sew along the edge, and the same for this side. Sewing along that edge. So when you get done sewing them all together, you should have something that looks like this. So I will be starting on this side. The beautiful side of the squares are on the top right now. So I am going to gently flip this over on top of the other square. Make sure my loose ends are sticking out so I can see them pretty clearly. And I'm going to get to work. I am going to make sure the corners are lined up. And I like to do that by putting my finger through those holes. And I'm going to start stitching. So like you saw in my sewing together granny square tutorial, I'm going to stitch the outer side of this stitch and the outer side of the other stitch together. I'm going to follow that same rhythm down both of the sides of these squares. Now I'm only going to go to this corner here. So now that I have one side done, I am going to move on to the other side. Now I have the nice side facing up. I will need to make sure this nice side is up, and I'm going to fold it over gently. And I'm going to line up these corners like I did before. Like so. And I'm going to crochet from this corner, sew from this corner to that corner. I will meet you there. So I have both of these sides done, and I'll be moving to this side. Remember, this is the good side. This is the good side, and I'm going to gently flip it over and sew these 2 edges together from corner to corner. So now that you have that last set of granny squares attached to your bigger granny squares, you're going to take your other pack of 4 and you're going to lay it right on top, just like that. Now I took out a long piece of yarn and I am going to be sewing around this whole square. I'm going to start by sewing this corner to this corner. So now that you have that side sewed, you're going to have something that looks like this. And this is the part where it can get a little tricky. What you're going to do is you are going to sew from this corner to this corner. When you get done doing that, you're going to have this little pouch here, this little hole. You're going to need to sew that back up. I will explain that more when you get there. Okay, so I just sewed down this side here, and like I said before, I have a little hole. See how the backpack is forming? Now the inside of this right now is the good side of the backpack. So what you're gonna do now is, like you did on this side, you're gonna skip this side right here. Hi, Lucky. And you're gonna sew from this corner to this corner. And you're gonna have another little hole, which we will address when we get there. So go ahead and sew from this corner to this corner. I will meet you there. So now that you have these three sides sewed, it's gonna look something like this. And remember, the good side of your squares are in the inside right now, and the ugly sides are on the outside. And you have the two holes right here. So now you are going to take some yarn and you are going to sew those sides together. So you see the hole here? We're going to take those two corners and sew them together. Tie the ends and weave in the tails. Same for this side. You're going to use another strand of yarn and sew from corner to corner, tie the ends and weave in the tails. I will meet you there. Once you get done sewing those holes on the corners, you should have something that looks like this. Keep in mind, this is the inside of the backpack. So when you turn it inside out, right now, you will have a glimpse of what your backpack will be looking like. How cute, right? So now that your backpack is coming together, it's a good idea to make a liner for the inside. I grabbed two 18 by 21 inches from Michael's Loops and Threads fabric. And I am going to, look how cute that is, yellow plaid. I figured it would match this the best. So what I'm going to do now is place the backpack on top and get an idea of how much and where I need to sew. So I'm going to sew down this side, and this side, but do not sew where the top of the backpack is going to be. So once again, sew, sew, sew. I'm using my sewing machine. You can hand thread, whatever you're comfortable with. Go ahead and do that. If you don't want to add fabric to the inside, that is up to you, but keep in mind, stuff can fall through these little holes here. So I will meet you there. So as you can see, I sewed down the three different sides, leaving this side open. I also folded over this edge to make it more of a clean look. So now what you're going to do is place the fabric on the inside of the backpack. You're not going to see the ugly part of that fabric if you put it in the right way. I will show you that in a second. So you're going to put it in the backpack and you're going to line up the corners to each side. So the corner of the fabric, you're going to line it up to the middle of that little granny square, and same on the other side. Okay. So the inside should have the pretty part of the fabric. And what you're going to do is you're going to hand stitch the fabric to the inside of the backpack to create a liner. And I will meet you there. So once you get done sewing the fabric to the inside of the backpack, you should have something that looks like this. I love when projects start to come together. Now we are going to add on the backpack flap, the part that's going to reach over and button in the middle. To do so, you're going to grab what you choose to be the back of the backpack and make sure the ugly side lines up with the ugly side and the good side lines up with the good side, like so. You're going to make sure the corners of your granny squares line up like before, and you were going to sew along this back end here like you did all the other granny squares. Now that you're all done sewing those last 2 granny squares onto the back of your backpack, you should have something that looks like this on the back. When you turn it over, it'll look like this. Now, I positioned my button where these 2 squares had fallen when I flipped it over, like so. I put my button right in the middle of those 2 granny squares where they landed on the front of the backpack. I'm going to go ahead and sew that button on, and I will meet you back. So after I added the button, I am going to add the loop right in the middle of these 2 granny squares that's going to attach to that button. So what I did was I attached the yarn to a spot right next to the middle, like so. And I chained 4, 5, 6. Let's see. I chained enough to go around the button so it won't get loose and fall off. So looks like 6. I chained 6 and I attached that chain to the other side around the same area of where I first attached the chain by doing a slip stitch, and then finishing off, and I will tie and securely attach that chain and weave in the ends. So a little practice run. Okay. When I weave in the ends, I will meet you back and explain the rest of the finishing product. Okay, so I'm switching it up here a little bit to show you what the rest of the backpack is going to look like. I am going to write out a pattern for how I made the backpack straps, and I'm going to write out a pattern for how I made this backpack loop holder, and I'm also going to explain to you how I made the drawstrings, and I'm going to screenshot it and add it to the video, and then I'll explain to you how to attach it all. So I will be back with that. Once you have your 2 backpack straps and your loop holder, you are going to sew them onto the backpack like you see here. I'm using this backpack to demonstrate because the colors are brighter and you'll be able to see better. So you will take the thicker part of the top of the granny square and sew the top of the strap to that thicker part. Same goes for this side and for the bottoms. And then for the loop holder, you are going to fold it in half, sew along this side and that side, and you are going to attach it to the thicker part of the middle of the 2 granny squares, like so. You're going to sew there and there. Once you get done, it's going to look something like this. I went in and out of the sets of 3 double crochet around the entire backpack. As you see here, it went in and out all around the backpack like so. You can clearly see it here. And I just made sure it was equal so that when you pull it tight, you can tie it, make a cute little bow, and let some of the ends hang loose. And yeah, so once I get done doing all that, I will show you the finished product.
Please subscribe and don't miss out on any other crochet tutorials.